From the Bodhisattva's Vow by Torei Enji Zenji. Even though they may be fools, be warm and compassionate toward them. If by chance they should turn against us and abuse and persecute us, we should bow down with humble words in the reverent belief that they are the merciful avatars of Buddha, who uses devices to emancipate us from sinful karma, harmful karma that has been produced and accumulated upon ourselves through our own egoistic delusion and attachment through the countless cycles of kalpa. Then, in each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus flower, and each lotus flower will reveal a Buddha. These Buddhas will glorify Sukhavati, the Pure Land, every moment, everywhere. Hi. If you like, sit facing this way. So it's already the third day of Holy Day's session. It's also the second day of Bark-Free Jenny. As you know, some of you know, Jenny's Anjan and my dog. And during the first Teisho there, she was in the room barking away, kind of mournful, aggressive, listen to me kind of bark. And fortunately, Shinge Roshi was quite kind about it and said later to Anjan, you know, she's just lonely down there. And led to a fairly easy solution, which is that myself and my wife take turns. Mostly I do it, go stay down there with her. And I've changed my seat in the Zendo from mostly, used to be mostly in there, now it's mostly down there. But our power extends over the 10 quarters and through the 3 periods of time, so it should be not a major problem to feel what's going on through a floor and a couple of walls. She's quite social. Even at age 14, I guess I thought, I didn't realize how much it was that she didn't want to be alone. And we thought, well, we can, go there on breaks and give her a little food and take her for quick walks, and that'll be enough. But it turns out that it was a big issue. We were down in the gatehouse, in the Beecher house, and she probably was barking away down there, but no one quite noticed it. So we got away with it, but now I have to do it. And I'm taking her for longer walks. I think she also wanted to get out more and get some exercise. So we go to Sangha Meadow twice a day, really, which is, she would go all the way to the gatehouse probably, but I'm not willing to go that far. So we wind up down there. And today, I passed the Jizos, the first 2 Jizos on the right there, and continued on and realized for the first time in a long time that monument that used to be down by the road, this with the, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name right now, the Basho poem, along this way goes no one this autumn evening, with beautiful calligraphy sort of on the right of it. It's like this, and it, Along this way goes no one this autumn evening. They've moved it up somehow, up to that part of the Sangha meadow. And there it was. And if Basha will forgive me, along this way goes no one this spring afternoon. And it has, just today, the spring weather seems to have really come to us. The breezes are coming through the windows. And the birds are returning. When I was walking, we were hearing quite a few woodpeckers this morning. Each one, I've been told it's the males that do the pecking, and they're kind of announcing themselves to the females, and thereby hoping to attract a mate. And each tree makes a kind of different sound, a different resonance. So some of them are quite beautiful sounding. And the geese started coming back a couple days ago. I saw them caulking their way up the stream and into the lake, and then sailing all the way across the lake, still squawking away, probably announcing themselves also, and settling in the lake. And then today there were two more. So possibly quite a few geese this year. Well, I had maybe 15 years of Catholic education, and I think I'd like to say something about Easter. Shinge Roshi spoke about the Buddha's birthday on day 1, and Hokuto Osho spoke about Rinzai, and this is the third of the holy days that we celebrate during Holy Day Sesshin. It's a simple story. What I was taught anyway, it was quite simple. Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden and broke God's law and ate from the tree of separating good from evil, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and were therefore booted out of the Garden of Eden and told they couldn't get into heaven. But God would send a Redeemer who would suffer and die for them, and therefore open the gates again. And Jesus Christ came, 2,000 or so years ago, and did this, suffered, was crucified, and on the third day rose again, embodied from the dead, and thus opening the gates of heaven for everyone. Apparently, what I was told was as soon as he died on the cross, he went to limbo, which is the place of waiting, where people, before they could get in there, and announced to them, this is the good news. It's opened again for you. But this is not my interest. Is to talk the dogma of the story. It may be, I don't know, speak to the truth or not truth of it, but what I am interested in is what this story, how it overlaps with what we're doing here in the Zen, in Sesshin, on the cushion, walking around, doing kinhin, eating, sleeping, everything we're doing here, and frankly, everything that serious-minded people are doing to practice. Is there something about this story which resonates with that? Well, Easter really starts with Passover, in the Catholic tradition anyway. The apostles, who happen to be 12 apostles, are gathered to have Passover meal, supper. The Last Supper you see painted, like Da Vinci's Last Supper, that's the Passover supper. And after the meal, Jesus says, "Take ye all," he broke some bread, "Take ye and eat this. This is my body." And then he took wine and said, "Drink from this. This is my blood, which shall be offered for you and for many for the forgiveness of sin." this is my body, then in each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus flower. And each lotus flower will reveal a Buddha. These Buddhas will glorify Sukhavati. And from his teacher, from Torii Enji's teacher, who happened to be Hakuin Kaku Zenji. Sentient beings are fundamentally Buddhas, like ice and water. Apart from water, no ice can exist. Outside sentient beings, where do we find the Buddhas, which we read today to start? And just one more short this realization teaches us that our daily food and drink, clothes and protections of life, are the warm flesh and blood, the merciful transformation of Buddha. So I think we can look at this, or at least once. What I feel is that I'm certainly not a teacher, and what I don't want to say something that like you should believe or not believe, but I'm just trying to share what I feel about this, and I'm hoping that you will either take or not take, and perhaps there's some way we can participate in this, more like a discussion. I'll be doing the talking, but like there's a sharing going on, and it's like Krishnamurti says, like two friends walking along, serious friends that are very serious about living, but they're sharing, and what they want to do is share, not like preaching or not like saying this is true or not true. But I'm thinking we can see in this is my body, about bread, it's all the body. Like the first day, Shinge Roshi said, baby Buddha stands and says, throughout heaven and earth, I all one, I alone am the world honored one. It's all the body. It's all the body. And the sacrament, as the Christians put it, could be looked at as a reminder of that. We used to be told not to chew the host when you got this little piece of bread on the tongue, and not to chew it because it would mix in with the teeth and so on, or just to let it dissolve and to swallow. But it was, whether you do or don't chew it, it's like it is a recognition that the God, let's call it, the Buddha nature, is in that moment coming into you. You're eating it. But always, and it's not just food, bread, wine, every step on the earth, on the ground, returning. Every movement, every breath. I feel that one can see that in this. I remember Thich Nhat Hanh actually offering bread this way. And of course my sensory awareness teacher, Charlotte Silver, and did it all the time with things, with food and other things. But asking a person to, Thich Nhat Hanh would say, I used to work at Omega and he came there a few times, would say, chew it 100 times each chew. And bread becomes very, very beautifully tasting, what do you call that? Very delicious. If you do that, and you're actually dissolving it from bread into sort of liquid, and then it's on its way to becoming you. It doesn't start out as bread. It starts out as seeds somewhere, wheat seeds, let's say, and the sun and rain from clouds comes down, seeds sprout, becomes wheat. In those talks, Thich Nhat Hanh would say something like, I look at the flower, or I look at the bread, and I see the cloud. Because without the cloud, without the rain, there's no flower. To regard the form of no form as form, whether singing or dancing, we are the voice of the Buddha. Interbeing, I like the word interbeing. One thing comes from another, returns to another, is sort of moves into another. And as we're eating, that process is happening. And we say, maybe I don't feel that each time. Maybe it's just like food. I'm not experiencing this. Well, I think the more I am here, the longer I'm here, especially during a session, it seems like so much is, I guess you'd say, set up to help a person remember. Remember, remember again, to remember, to let it be part of you again. The experience of interbeing that way, that the food I'm eating not only will become me, but it has come from everywhere. You hear the bells, the resonation as a bell moves into silence. And just the fact of silence. We take it for granted after we've been here a while because we get used to it. But in silence, a person can return to this kind of feeling so much easier than if while we're eating, talking. And then we walk and get up and bow to each other. It's not just me alone, but there's a whole sangha here. There's a whole group of us here. And we bow to each other. And we walk in a line, and we feel. Now we're on the deck. We walk on the deck when we go to the Tenzo. Sometimes you feel the deck is a little colder, a little sun here and there, a little softer, warmer. You hear the sounds. And everything can be quieting the thought process. And therefore, opening the brain, the me, to other forms of energy. The brain cells are kind of habituated into this or that, and or maybe it's not the cells; it might be the pathways between, the synapses and things between them. But there's a habituation going on. Again, Shingi Roshi said yesterday, or not yesterday, a couple of days ago, Buddha, baby Buddha, starts out, throughout heaven and earth. I am the only one. And we all start out that way, she said, all the babies. But somewhere along the way, or gradually, things get habituated and we feel separate, feel isolated, feel it's like me. What's in it for me? What do I get tomorrow? Who likes me? Who doesn't like me? How am I doing? How long do I have? All these kinds of things is about me. And in the beginning, eating food, perhaps it's mother's milk, is all consuming, is all uniting, is all reuniting me with I'll use the word totem for fun, Buddha. And after a while, somewhere along the line, we gradually create, or somehow this separate self is created that is no longer quite as involved with it. And here we have these 7 days, some people have longer, where we can, in silence, kind of return to that. You know, we go into the tenzo and we bow to each other and we're chanting, and you know, even with my mask on, the diaphragm was opening up, and I was able. It's hard for me to breathe with the mask sometimes, but the diaphragm was opening up, and it became easier. And you have a partner across from you, and you're sharing all sorts of things as the food comes down. You know, it's amazing how many things it would take. It's very hard to learn this for a human. You know, but we're pretty good at this kind of thing, and so you coordinate with the person while you're pulling down the food, not too much force, not too little, and you know, so that it goes together, and then you take the right amount. You move the fork and so on so that they can more easily get it. It's this whole team effort. Everything is asking us to leave behind this isolation, so that by the time we actually pick these nice wooden chopsticks and maybe we feel the weight of them, or maybe we just feel them and try to make them work, and start eating, we're actually fairly quiet. But not the kind of quiet that's alone, but the kind of quiet that's with the Sangha, and can lead us toward this kind of tasting, which becomes the body of Buddha. Or Jesus said, "This is my body." It's a kind of melting of the hard self, of the one that feels alone, that feels separate, the one that feels what's in it for me. You know, all the time. Werner Erhard was an leader, founder of that, and he used to talk about his dog. I had this cassette tape I used to play in my car when they had cassettes in cars. And he says, you know, I have this big dog, and he's so big I can study him quite easily. And there's one thing I can tell you about the dog. He is not concerned about how he's doing. He's not concerned about himself. He wants to eat, he wants to be scratched on the head, but he's not wrapped up in himself the way people are. And he says people are only wrapped up in themselves. We're always thinking, what's going to happen tomorrow? Time sort of creates the self. If I'm in the moment, if I'm absolutely here, the self is kind of gone. It's when I think what's going to happen next, or what happened before, or how am I doing? You know, separate, that this self gets established. The geese flying in have none of that, I think. I think they're just looking around for the nice spot to land. And then 2 more come, and they probably figure out how we're going to share the lake somehow. I don't know how that all works. But it's done without planning, I would say. Today the ice finally melted on the lake. Last night probably the last ice went away. And the lake is now flowing. It used to probably flowed under the lake and down these waterfalls on the southern end of the lake here, with that bridge. It makes the sound, the thunderous sound of the bridge. Now it's all flowing. It's our spring lake. It's our summer lake and fall lake. And all the ice that was on top is now lake again. And it can all flow down over those waterfalls and down the Beaver Kill River or it's a stream at that point, past the gatehouse, and then it turns downhill toward the right, flows down, passes Irving Berlin's, where he used to live, and it goes all the way toward Margaretville. I think it turns to the, that would be west again, and goes all the way to the Delaware River, which then flows down eventually to the Atlantic Ocean. I remember Edo Roshi once speaking about, he says, we say there's 5 oceans or even 7 seas, but it's really all one ocean. They all merge. It just kind of looks that way from here and there. It looks like this is the Atlantic and that's the Pacific. And I think if you look at satellite pictures or pictures from above, you can see that. It's like this big globe with sort of islands floating in this big one ocean, which this beach or lake is emptying toward and then being refilled from the mountains and streams, springs. So that night, I'm talking about the Last Supper there, and that night, Jesus went with his most of the things around the Easter story take place in threes, which is, I find kind of interesting. He took 3 disciples and they went to this garden called Gethsemane. And he sort of foresaw what was about to happen and asked his Father, who in the story, God, please, can this cup pass from me? Can I not go through this? And then he realized that was not an option, and said, but thy will be done. Which I would say is another way to say what Hokuto Osho was saying with Rinzai yesterday. When the suffering comes or difficulties come, not to fight it, not to separate. Thy will be done, you could say like God, or you could say it's, but it's there. And not to fight it, not to separate it, and it changes. It changes, he said, and that's also my experience. That suffering requires separation. When one is completely with it, it can't stand up to that. It goes back to non-suffering elements. Suffering is made up of non-suffering. It's made up of brain cells. It's made up of blood cells, muscles that are, habituated, memories that are painful, whatever it is. Ego, the me. And when one gives that up enough to just move right into the suffering, it's no longer that. It's something else. It might feel like circulation. It might feel like joy. It might feel like pure energy. It might feel like Buddha nature, if we let it go enough. So thy will be done. And then the next day, the events start quickening a little, and the Pilate washes his hands and seals his fate. And Jesus has to carry the cross. But once again, it's a kind of cleansing, and it's not, I would say, if you ask me, we say this are the result of our own egoistic delusions and attachments and so on. Yes, but it's also, we were born in this, I think, this 2 million years at least of a kind of evolution towards being, switching from herbivores to hunters and planning, thinking, and, if you fight with me and see those guys down there, we can defeat them and we can, take that water hole and then all those antelopes will be ours, that kind of thing. It's been going on for a long, long time. probably longer than, it probably started well before hominids and early humans, this kind of planning thinking, which gets hardened into me. Me in the sense of ego me, thought me, who I think I am, not who I really am. Rinzai said yesterday, if we have faith in ourselves, there's no problem. But that's not that kind of self which is planning, calculating, and self-interested. It's the real self, which is not separate from the organism, me here, you there. But it's not this conflicted one, not the one that's trying to do this and that at the same time. So carrying the cross, as I see it, is kind of like carrying the weight of all of that evolution of human tendency to do this thing, and letting it go. The church talks about he was doing this for us, but for him, for us, for all, when we're sitting and we are breathing, and whether it's difficult or easy, there's a cleansing. There's a cleansing. And this, to me, is what's going on in that carrying of the cross. I'm thinking of a Beatles song now, boy, you're gonna carry that weight a long time. But if we, the good news about the sort of hara and breathing is that you don't have to carry it with it, like on the shoulders, Doesn't have to weigh it down. It's like I'm sitting, and you're sitting, if anyone wants to explore this physically, I'm sitting on these sitting bones, which is on a cushion, on a floor, on an earth, and it all can be rooted, grounded, interconnected with the earth, what's below. So my own personal history, as it comes up and needs to be cleansed, or family history, human history, whatever it is, it's not like I have to carry it exactly. I have to feel it. Can't avoid that. But it can be felt on the earth. I mean, when I say on the earth, I'm sitting on the earth also. I am supported by the earth, by the floor, at the same time that this particular human karma is being felt. It's not being, as I see it, it's not being felt alone. There's others, the Sangha, there's the teachers, there's the ancestral teachers. I'm right now looking at, I called her Maureen Stewart, Mioan. And when I was coming in here, I felt a little nervous. And it was quite nice to just see her. She was a friend of mine at a point, and I didn't feel alone. Next to Yasutani Roshi, who was Philip Kapleau's teacher and one of Edo Roshi's teachers, I believe, and big part of the 3 pillars of Zen, which was how I really got involved with sitting. Was the 3 pillars of Zen. It was not just the physical instruction, but his talks. I felt like he was talking to me, direct, like we had a phone line or something, direct. And Yasutani, so not alone. The earth is always there supporting us. And gravity, this is kind of sensory awareness, but gravity is always pulling us toward the middle of the earth. And these 2 forces, support and gravity, and our breath, our energy, gives a lot of energy. The opposite forces, support, gravity, breathing. All this energy is available to kind of take suffering, if you call it that, take difficulties, and let it become something else. Yeah.
We carry the ancestors' seeing whatever we carry as a karma. You said that Jesus Christ carrying the cross. What does Jesus Christ carrying the cross? Is that the ancestral karma?
What is it that he's doing while he's carrying the cross?
Yeah.
Well, the Christians say he's doing it for us. He was a pure being. To me, the story is more like a person, and I would call that karma, yes. I would. Yeah, I would call it feeling and relieving of karma. And he falls 3 times on that journey. You know, it's that sort of heavy. And has to be helped up. And I believe at the end someone has to help him carry it. And then he's hanging there, uplifted, I would call it, by the cross for 3 hours. And it's all kind of a cleansing, getting ready to let go. To, you could say, die. And the Christians say on the 3rd day he rose again, but it's also immediate. As soon as the death occurred, immediately rose. And we were told he went to limbo, like I mentioned. But that's not important. What's important is that as soon as the death of the karma, the self, to the degree that it happens immediately is the rebirth. As we said, Shinge Roshi said on day 1, the rebirth, immediately. Is that? Yeah. So I have in my phone a couple of screensavers that are sort of unusual. When I was first here in 1976 and 76, Yamada Muman Roshi came with like 60, 70 monks. And Edo Roshi said, Yamada Muman, before he came, he's sort of like he's got a hippie quality. He had a beard, for a Roshi, and he has this like white hair coming down. But he said, pay great attention, please, when these monks come. So we met them, we went down and met their buses. We're down there at the gatehouse. And they all got off their buses, like a lot of them. And when they got off, they put on their big Japanese monk hats and started walking single file up this hill from the bottom up to the top, and we sort of followed. And I was listening to my teacher then and trying to sort of vibe in on what all these Japanese monks were up to. And I was watching them while they were cleaning the zendo and doing this and that. And what I noticed, the first thing I noticed was that they were kind of happier about their work than we were, like doing it more enthusiastically with a lot of energy. And when I was cleaning cushions and stuff, I was kind of sanctimonious about the whole thing, this is a holy thing, careful. They were kind of throwing them around a little bit, but they were totally into the task, and they were doing it together in a different way. The sort of interactions was, and we didn't have much to do, for all these people. So somehow they decided to have them carry wood up individually from the woodshed. We were burning wood in those days here, a lot of wood, and they had them carry it without trucks and stuff, kind of individually up to the furnace room here, and someone else would put it in the furnace room where we stored it. And they did all sorts of things. Made a what do you call that when one person hands it? A chain gang, and one guy made it. Two guys made this kind of like wheelbarrow thing that they somehow concocted, and they were carrying the wood, and it was just like a whole lot of I was going to say camaraderie, good energy. And it went into this session. We had a session together, and we were so crowded. We were sitting in the, the corridor you walk around in Kinhin? We were sitting out there. And I thought, well, I should be, I didn't like being hit with a stick too much, and these guys were hitting really hard. And, but I thought I should do it. So every time the guy would come around, and he had to kind of step over a mat where someone else was sitting and onto the tatami mat, reach through the shoji screen, and he did it so hard, but so perfectly on target, that kind of thing. They were both playful and ultra serious at the same time. So I remembered. Anyway, Yamada Mumon, who brought them up, and Eo Takada Roshi, and Edo Roshi were taken by Rinko, who's named Peggy Crawford, photo of them, which I gave that photo to Shinge Roshi. But before I gave it, I somehow took pictures of Takada and Yamada and miraculously turned them into screensavers. I don't know if I could repeat that process, but there they are. Well, Takada Roshi was the first Zen master that I ever met. He was teaching in Mexico City. And my friend, Mike, I'll just say Mike, who I had known from college, from day one in college, had gone to Japan and also then went from there to Mexico City to study with Takada Roshi. And he told me, I'm going to bring him up to Washington and he'll visit us. And we had this group house near Georgetown. Well, the amount of things that had to happen for that to happen was unbelievable to me when I think about it. When I was preparing this talk, I was thinking, first of all, Mike and I both had to go to Georgetown. I wanted to go to St. Vincent's College in Pennsylvania because I thought maybe I can play basketball there because it's a small little school and I'd like to do that. But my mother and I went to at Bergen Catholic, we went to a college night. And the guy from Georgetown came there and he was pretty impressive. And she liked the way he dressed and she liked the way he talked. And she said, what about Georgetown? So why don't you be we'd rather be a big fish in a small pond. Why don't you be a little fish in a big pond? There might be more in that for you. And so eventually I sort of saw her wisdom or whatever and went there. That was one thing that had to happen. Then Mike had to be on my corridor. And then he dropped out of school right away, after the first year, and went and finished his schooling in Ohio. But fortunately, he had made a good friendship with the guy right next to me. And they kept up their friendship. And so when this other guy, I'm talking about John and his friends, we made this group house together. And of course, then Mike came to visit us. And as I was pursuing my own kind of hippie way of, but actually it's odd because it was kind of a psychedelic-y early training. But there was something in karma or whatever that really guided, through these experiences. You can easily get lost in there. As Donovan says, few people get there quick by the chosen road. They don't know it's quicker to go by natural velocity. There's so many ways you can get lost in that. And somehow, with the aid of Yasutani Roshi and Philip Kapleau and so on, I was kind of guided into clarity, let's say, enough that I knew I had to practice something. And Mike was there and he said, well, what about Zazen? And then we were in this beautiful old bookstore in Georgetown and I had this philosophical Buddhist book and 3 Pillars of Zen. And he said, well, 3 Pillars of Zen, And that led not only to how to sit and being willing to sit, but like I say, to this communication to Yasutani, which opened up to this sort of open young hippie, opened up lots of doors. So when Mike said, I'm bringing Takada up, Eo Takada, I was pretty excited because here was a Zen master. And he wasn't yet Takada Roshi, but he was a Zen master. And I was working or something, and I came home to my house, and there he was sitting in the end of our living room, and I knew this was him without meeting him, and so I thought, well, maybe you're supposed to bow to Roshi. So I kind of like did a prostration, and he looked sad like that. He says he didn't really want me to treat him that way. He wanted me to treat him like a friend, I think. I mean, I saw that in his eyes, and I'm quite sure of that. He wasn't the kind of guy that carried anything around, especially he wasn't like, he probably had to do that when he was in a temple or something, but in visiting someone's house, he just wanted to be a friend. So we all went together in our cars to, probably one car, to Circle Theater to see the Marx Brothers movies that were playing there that day. And I don't know which one, maybe Day at the Races, I forget which one. But I was so, like, what does a Zen master do? So I asked him in the car, do you ever sleep? And I had no idea. I thought maybe they have so much energy they don't sleep. And he did this beautiful, smiling like this. I sleep. And then we went to the movies, and I was really happy with the way he was so excited by the Marx, so happy with the Marx Brothers, laughing away. And at one point I got kind of, hysterical laughter, and I was like overwhelmed with laughter and kind of bent over. And he was right down there with me looking, up. And so I never forgot him. And I went to Rochester, of course. Like I think I mentioned, I went to Rochester to practice for quite a while with Philip Kapleau, a few years, maybe 3 or 4 years, 6 months living there, and then going back and forth to some sessions. But then when I came here, and the monks came soon thereafter, like maybe 6 months later or something, the monks all came. He came with them, and it was just, I don't know, everybody fell in love with Takata Roshi. And so he was just so humble, open, and loving. And so one of the guys, the kind of the top honcho guy of the students, sort of said, well, we're all going to go visit Takata Roshi as soon as this Kesei's over. And it was almost like a little mini rebellion. Like, you want to come? We're all going to go. And so somehow I think Edo Roshi got word of it. But anyway, Takata gave a talk with us all at in the dining hall here. And I think he deliberately kind of stumbled and made himself kind of like almost too humble. And I think it was a kind of a take the heat off this, you guys thinking I'm so great kind of thing. And the kind of momentum went away, and we could go back to Kesei, and things kind of went back to normal. And that was the last. Well, I saw him once in the shoe room there when he says, because he did acupuncture in Mexico, and he said that's what the people more need there right now. But he did say, which I remembered always, I cure, not so much with the needles, but with the hara. And or you could say it cures with the hara, or it cures the whole self. And I always remembered his sense of healing, that it was a full body. Because I like to do shiatsu myself, and it does feel that way, this whole pouring of the self and receiving of, through the fingers, through the touch. And anyway, that was the last I saw him, but I will always love him. Takata, Eo Takata, and he's in my phone now. He's at the third page, which there's only one app, which I think is Compass. So his whole face is there, visible on that page of my phone. So the Bodhisattva's Vow by Torii Enji Zenji. to bow down. If someone turns against us, we should bow down in the reverent belief that they are the merciful avatars of Buddha, who uses devices to emancipate us from harmful karma. Avatar is a pretty good word. It's a Sanskrit word, an Indian word. And it really means God becoming a human form and walking around. And to emancipate us from sinful karma. I think the way I feel about this is it's not just someone turning against us, but any conflict, whether it could even be an internal conflict. I want to sit and I'm angry, or I'm tired, or whatever it is. I can't get some image from the past away. You could say it's turned against me. Something in me has turned against me. There's a conflict created. Bowing down, this is the avatar of the Buddha. This is, like we were saying yesterday, when the suffering shows up. It's the emancipation is right there. The conflict shows up. Here's the emancipation. I don't think it's the same when persecution is like political, like say racial persecution. Martin Luther King speaks about it, or colonial persecution, like Gandhi was speaking of. They both came to a kind of similar conclusion, which is not to fight persecution with anger, with violence, but to fight it with love, in Gandhi's case and in Martin Luther King's case. But the idea is not to take it, but to not let it go on. Gandhi describes it this way. Its root meaning is holding, this is satyagraha, by the way, satyagraha. Its root meaning is holding on to the truth, hence truth force. I have also called it love force or soul force. In the application of satyagraha, I discovered in the earliest stages that the pursuit of truth did not admit of violence being inflicted on one's opponent, but that he must be weaned from error by patience and compassion. For what appears to be true to one may appear to be an error to the other, and patience means self-suffering. So the doctrine came to mean vindication of truth, not by the infliction of suffering on the opponents. And then Martin Luther King, from the I Have a Dream speech, which was given, by the way, in the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. As you know, Lincoln, you could say, was the president that was most helpful in ending slavery. And he chose to do that kind of at the foot of that big Abraham Lincoln. But there is something that I must say to my people who stand on the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, and when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. So standing up when needed, but when not needed, like when it's sort of us, just letting it be itself as the avatar of the Buddha, using devices to emancipate us from sinful karma. And freedom will ring. There, let freedom ring. Here's a story of, here, let's take a change break. Of my great aunt Anna, who was born in Paterson, New Jersey, which has become famous for poets Allen Ginsberg and William Carlos Williams, and baseball player Larry Doby, who was the second African American to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. First black guy to play in the American League. Anyway, he went to Paterson High School and grew up there. Founded by Alexander Hamilton when he saw the Great Falls of Paterson. There's huge falls. And he and his friends said, this is a pretty good place for an industrial city. And they did that. They made it into one of the biggest industrial cities of its time. And my parents, grandparents, my whole family pretty much grew up there. They were all teachers. My mother was a teacher, our teacher. My father was a teacher, did mostly manual training. So he used to go, they taught in the same school, which was near the Great Falls, called School Number 5, because why give it a name? You know, it's number 5. And they taught there together, and he would help her with her art projects and her theater and stuff by making props for her, and they got to know each other pretty well. My godmother was a teacher. Our next door neighbor, our across the street neighbor, was a principal. And everybody teachers in the public schools, Paterson. So you would think when it was time for me to go to school that they would send me there, but they sent me to the Catholic school. And in those days, it was St. Joseph's Catholic School. It was run by Sisters of Charity. In those days, nuns were kind of scary. They wore black from their shoes, black veils, black other veils, habits covering their head, and they had these like white visor things, so you couldn't really see their face, and they had to look kind of straight. They couldn't really look out to the side. And needless to say, as a 5-year-old, I was kind of scared to go to school, and but I went, and one day I had to go to the bathroom, but I was too afraid to raise my hand. So I came up with an almost foolproof plan. My father had given me a handkerchief, and I thought, well, surely this can absorb, a little water. But having not had peripheral vision, my good nun there, I think Sister Daniel, I'm not sure, was very sharp at what she saw, and immediately saw this misdemeanor. And but she looked at me with such kindness and such, I still remember it felt like love in her eyes, and took care of everything without any kind of embarrassment. And I started thinking, I don't know if I thought this, but now I do, that, it wasn't, they were wearing kind of scary, looked like otherworldly denial of life clothing, but inside was this heart, caring. So it was a small school, and it had a little tiny courtyard, and pretty far from my house. So most of my friends were in our neighborhood in East 26th Street in Patterson. And my best friend was Gary. And I, even in those days, knew that Gary was Jewish and I was Catholic, even as a 5 and 6-year-old. So he came to my house one day out in the yard, and I said to him, who do you believe in? And he said, I believe in Moses. And I said, he said, who do you believe in? I said, I believe in Jesus. And so we handled it like, good, mature people. We wrestled. We fought. And I don't remember who won, but I do know, I wish I could say it was muddy and we came up out of the mud, but no, the ground was dry and we just sort of stood up and acknowledged each other, and I said, okay, I accept Moses, and he said, okay, I accept Jesus. And having solved this ecumenical issue, I went into my house and made myself an open-faced mayonnaise sandwich on Wonder Bread, which my father was one of these kind of guys that had friends here and there around the town, and he had a friend at the Wonder Bread factory. So we would go into there was a factory of Wonder Bread in Patterson in those days, and go into and he would give us a loaf of Wonder Bread, hot, right out of the oven. I used to love to eat the hot Wonder Bread and kind of mush it up, like they have at Italian street fairs. They call it hot dough, And nowadays, my taste has matured, so I have mayonnaise with peanut butter on whole wheat. Anyway, Gary and I, the next day, having accomplished all this, decided, well, let's go out and shoot some stuff. So we got sticks and turned them into rifles. And Patterson's a kind of big city, but there were still some lots that had woods in them. So we kind of went into one of these lots and lay down on our bellies and with our sticks, shot. There was a nice little girl playing in the yard next to so we made these sounds and apparently scared her. I don't remember, for some reason, I don't remember that she got scared, but I do remember that the next day or even that night, big car pulled up to our house, and an even bigger guy got out of the car and said to my mother, was your son disturbing my daughter? And I think I was there. At least she told it. I feel like I was there. And she said, I'll take care of it. Don't worry. You don't have to worry. I will take care of it. And he says, as long as you take care of it, ma'am, that's all I ask. And that was Larry Doby, the baseball player. And I don't know if this had anything to do with me becoming a nonviolent resistor or a pacifist, but I think it might have, that kind of thing. Anyway, my Aunt Anna, great aunt, she was my mother's aunt, visited us even when we moved to Ridgewood. We did, what we were supposed to do and moved out to the suburbs, and she kept visiting us until she got too old and went to a nursing home called Dolly Mount. And when she was rather old, she was getting ready to die, probably. I guess I felt that this would be the last visit I would see her. And she took my hand, and she actually kind of grabbed it and held it rather firmly and said, pray for me, pray for me. So I said goodbye and did my best with that, but I had these formula prayers that was taught in the school. My mother probably taught me some, but somehow I never felt like my prayer could reach her need. And I guess I see her as a Bodhisattva now that was giving me a kind of like a koan. How can you reach someone like that or help? How can you help someone that's dying and is asking for your help? She could have asked anyone else. She asked me, and it became that kind of thing that I forgot about until somewhere it acted underneath the mind. magical connections, genuine reflections. Chances are created underneath your mind. It worked under me, and I think that became part of a process. But these avatars of the Buddha, showing up and sort of not looking like gods or not looking like, but making these communications. Each moment's flash of our thought, there will grow a lotus flower, and each lotus flower will reveal a Buddha. For me, this kind of thought, that word to me implies that there's, and I don't know, but it implies that I'm having a thought, which is kind of thoughts are sort of separating. The most noble thought, like I want to save all sentient beings, is a sort of separation, because Buddha tells us there's no sentient beings and there's no me to save them. He doesn't actually say that in the sutra, but it's implied. And, so it's kind of like, it's already a separation, But with that merging attitude, merging with suffering, merging with my opponent, merging with my persecutor, the thought is even in that moment becoming a lotus flower, becoming a blossoming flower, glorifying the Pure Land. Every moment, everywhere. This very place, the Lotus Land of Purity. And it's all, like I was saying, we're sitting on and with, if you feel like in any way, just like raising a hand, spreading the fingers, it all can quiet this thought. I can pay attention to what is, as what is most essential is the practice of attention. When, whatever it is, closing the eyes, opening the eyes, passing the food, pouring the water to wash the bowls, bringing your bowl over so the person can more easily pour the water into it. A couple of times I'm thinking this stuff, and my partner across the way says, it's like, it's time to do this or that. And but having help like that, come on back to the present moment. Come on back to this moment. Hearing my voice, independent of what's being said, or including what's being said, but just hearing it. You might, if you feel like closing your eyes, does that change the sound in any way? Does that open anything? Does it feel different to hear a voice without seeing? And then when they open, how does that feel? How does this breeze feel on your shaved heads or necks? So each moment's flash of our thought, let's say that the thought ends, and we're back in the lotus flower land. So I wanted to tell you of how I met, or how Maureen Milan and I first met. And I think it was after the Holy Day session. It was during the Holy Day session, I believe, in 76. And Charlotte Selver, who was our mutual sensory awareness teacher, she studied with her younger than me. And then I didn't have any idea about this sensory awareness stuff. And Ada Roshi said, well, there's a group of people coming here, and they're actually very mature people. So I thought, well, what he means by mature is kind of like enlightened, some of them anyway. And Charlotte Selver was coming from New York with, I don't know, 20 or so. And I was the Tenzo. So, but Roshi was kind enough to say, you can, suspend your duties enough that you can participate in these meetings with Charlotte Selver. So I kind of left the Tenzo door there and passed by her. She was already started the meeting, the session. And I swear she was my grandmother. It wasn't like she just looked like her, but this was my grandmother to me. And I felt immediately rapport and really enjoyed doing all these things. And at one point, we were sort of what you call pushing. But it's kind of really like feeling your energy augment and the other person's energy augment and feeling your augmented energy. You're kind of taking a stance, so you can really push. And she wanted to do it with me. So I was thinking, well, here's this like 75-year-old woman, and I'm this pretty strongish 28 or 9, 30-year-old male, and so I better go easy on her. And her augmented energy was quite something. And I felt myself being pushed back. Anyway, it was such a respite of how I was approaching Zen. I was approaching it like a struggle, like a strain, like sit in full lotus no matter what and go through it. And pain. I was feeling a lot of pain. And not like kind to myself, like really wanting to get through it all. I thought if I get through it, it'll be over. But so I was increasing it and stuff. And anyway, this was another way and a different approach, which now I think there's no conflict between those ways of doing things, sitting, and in fact, sensing you're sitting all the time. And but I couldn't, it was so hard to let her go and let that group go home. And I was standing there kind of sad by the dining hall, and Ada Roshi picked up on it somehow, and he just said, Charlotte Selver. And it was like he knew what I was sad about, and I had to go study with her in that whole summer in Monhegan Island, and then came back here. But anyway, the week after or so, after Charlotte left, we had a session here, and during one of the breaks, I was walking down the road here towards the woodshed there, and there was a woodchuck. So I sat down and looked at the woodchuck for a while and just sat there. And I kind of got lost in the woodchuck for a while, and then I looked up, and there was this very present, very beautiful woman standing there also looking at the woodchuck, or seeing the woodchuck. And it was Myoan. And we smiled, and I think we probably walked back to the monastery together, I don't know, but we never said one word, not even hello, how are you, any of that stuff. And she remembered that and spoke to me a few times about it, how happy she was to have met me over a woodchuck and in silence, and never knowing anything like names or whatever. And so now and then we would run into each other at sessions and so on. And after I did my business, which was a kind of a health food restaurant, which became a rock club in Hoboken for 10 years, the end of that time, I started going to West Coast, to Green Gulch, to study with Charlotte Selver. She did these 3-month study groups, her and her husband, Charles Brooks. And then the third one, I think, that I did, and we would sit in meditation with the monks there. It was like a combination of sensing and meditation. Myoan came there and was going to lead a session. In fact, was about to lead a session. And I went to her introduction talk. And I think this was informal. So I asked, here you are at a Soto place, Soto monastery, and your history is Rinzai-ish. How does this work? And she said, people like us have to go beyond these distinctions sometimes. And so of course I remembered that. I wanted to, to pigeonhole the whole So I went to all her talks and all her as many sittings as I could go to without skipping out on the sensing work. And at the end, I told Charlotte Selver that Myoan is Maureen Stewart. I think she might have remembered the name Maureen Freegood, but anyway, is here. And Charlotte said, "Oh, you must bring her up to the house. I must meet her." So it was the last day of their being here, so I kind of perched myself by the window and watched for her to come out. And she came out of the Gento area and was walking there. And I said to Charlotte, I said, "Can I go out?" And she's there. So I went out and told Maureen, Charlotte Selver would really like to see you. And so she, of course, came right away and they met again for the first time in a long time. And beautiful, warm meeting. And Charlotte was like 90 now, and Maureen was getting kind of near the end of her life. So it was probably the last meeting they had. But they were quite deep friends of the way, so I was happy that all this could take place, and all kind of due to a woodchuck. And that was also probably the last time I saw Maureen. Myoan. So I think it's a pretty good stopping place. And there's a song by the Youngbloods that was not a great remembering song. It didn't stand up to rock and roll history, but I think it was quite a good song. Love is but a song we sing, fear away we die. You can make the mountains ring or make the angels cry. Know the dove is on the wing, you need not know why. Then it goes, come on, people now, smile on your brother. Everybody get together, try to love one another right now. So if you're willing, I'd like to sing that the verse of that together, if whoever wants to, and we could end with that. So if you want to join me, join. Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right now. Come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together, try to love one another right